It's telling me to use an Ethernet cable, which I am. Let me double check something. Everybody stand by. All right, I'm going to unplug the router. There's a chance I'm going to lose all of you guys, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Just stand by. Hopefully you guys couldn't hear me. What's up, everybody? Glad to fucking be here. Happy happy election day to everybody listening. Looks like we've already been live for 4 minutes. Glad I wasn't talking shit. We're here. I'm gonna have to edit this one down a little bit. Okay, couldn't hear me on YouTube. Great, you can hear me now, TR. We're up and running. Happy election day. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna make sure that I close out the other one and let everybody know where we are. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure it's this shitty fucking Spectrum internet that they gave me that isn't connecting to the router in the appropriate way. But hold on 1 second. Okay. Well, we've made it, guys. Happy election night. You know what's funny is I already saw people talking crap on my title for this video today. I said it's an election night here in Wisconsin. What's funny is that that is actually a play on former Pittsburgh Penguins broadcaster Mike Lang, because he would start every single game going, "It's a hockey night here in Pittsburgh." So I did my own variation of that. So I took a Pittsburgh guy's adage, applied it to politics. Nobody's going to get the reference that I was trying to make other than me, and yet here we are. But I did my best for what it's worth. Power cycle the router. I'm not sure what that means, but I will give that a look nevertheless. Jay is up here saying, raise your hand if your whole day is just be worried about the primaries. Nah, well, allow me to start here. Start here at fucking 9:22. I'm so sorry I'm late on election day, guys. For what it's worth, I didn't lose my cool once in those 22 minutes. So just know that I kept it calm, cool, and collected the entire time. Here's the thing. Nothing you can do about it at this point other than vote. Like, worrying is the least effective thing that you can do. And here's the thing I know. Yeah, you guys know me. Here's the best suggestion I can give you guys is that worrying is just basically agonizing about things that haven't happened yet, which is the worst kind of thing that you can do for your time. If you're listening to this show, and I pride myself on the fact that quite a few people listen to this show that are activists, that are politically engaged, that know what they are talking about and know what they are doing. And if you find yourself in that boat, whether it be simply just showing up to vote, canvassing for somebody, phone banking, going to these different events around town, using your voice to get the information out there, whatever the situation is, then you've done your part, and then you just kind of got to let the chips fall where they may. I wrote an article for the Minocqua Brewing Company Substack this morning. Well, yesterday, actually. But and I entitled it Vote Blue No Matter Who. And I wasn't doing it ironically. I was doing it to kind of highlight something that I very rarely ever say. Because we are very fortunate in the state of Wisconsin that this was actually a primary that was on the up and up. This was a primary where the establishment didn't all drop out on the same day and coalesce around a candidate. There wasn't $60 million of APAC money and other random outside of Wisconsin money designed specifically to tank the progressive candidate. This was just a straight up election. A bunch of people with slightly different ideas all put their ideas out there into the public sphere and are allowing you, the voters, to decide. Now, I obviously have my preference, and as I've been stating on and off over the last couple weeks, I'm intending to vote for Francesca Hong. But I'll tell you right now, every single one of these candidates has my vote because Tom Tiffany doesn't have any ideas, and I don't trust him to certify an election if and when the Republicans lose in 2028. So in and of itself, those two things are enough for me to show up and vote for an establishment them, even though I don't necessarily believe the fact that they will be as effective of a leader as Francesca Hong will be. But so that's been so that's my perspective on the matter. And excuse me as we have a special guest coming on at 9:40, so I just want to make sure that I get her, because of course this has just been a cluster. All right, so compose, there we go. And by the way, we may as well share this for everybody here. Anybody who wants to get some final thoughts on, if you're not a regular contributor to Outside the Box, this is the perfect day to do it. I'm posting the link in the chat on YouTube. I'll hop on Facebook to read comments in a second as well. Anybody who wants to chime in about who they're voting for, their thoughts on the matter, who wants to get their voice heard in Northeast Wisconsin, that's available. We're in a very exciting time. Is Wisconsin an open primary? Yes, it is, which has its pros and its cons, to be perfectly frank. Like a little bit of perspective on that. Pennsylvania is not open primaries, and I have only been a registered Democrat since 2021 because I obviously, you guys know how I feel about the Democratic Party. So I always was a registered independent, but because of the way that Pennsylvania worked, I was not allowed to vote in the 2016 Democratic primary when the Democrats fucked Bernie Sanders over, and I was not allowed to vote in the 2020 primary when the Democrats fucked Bernie Sanders over. So I said, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again. And funnily enough, that was when the Democrats woke up and said, oh, we don't even have to do a primary. And that's what happened in 2024. So that sucks because I don't want to be affiliated with either political party, and now I am, because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to have the ability to take part in primaries anymore. But now you see a lot of right-wingers talking about, I'm going to show up and vote for Hong just because she's the weakest candidate. A laughable assertion, in my opinion. What I believe is actually more likely is something similar to what we saw in Michigan, where we're finding out that Democratic voters were overrepresented by about 30% relative to the previous primary. And there's a lot of speculation, although no ironclad proof. But there's a lot of speculation that a lot of right-wingers went in and voted for Haley Stevens because, as has been my contention essentially since you've known me, centrist, milquetoast, liberal approach to politics does not do as much to gin up people that don't always show up to vote, whereas progressive politics is getting an entirely new demographic of people that oftentimes doesn't show up in these kind of mornings or on these kind of days. So to me, in an open primary, if you ask me who would Republicans vote for, I think they'll throw their weight behind David Crowley. The difference between here and Michigan, though, is that David Crowley is not the recipient of $60 million from AIPAC. Now, don't get me wrong. He doesn't have the capacity to condemn data centers the same way Francesca Hong has. He doesn't have the same kind of transcendent ideas. Again, I do think he's a weaker candidate, but it doesn't change the fact that Republicans would want to see him in there to hopefully depress turnout, but I don't know that that would happen in Wisconsin. And I refuse to buy into the idea that there's enough of our grandparents that are not going to show up and vote for this woman. Here's the simple fact of the matter here. April elections are not November elections. I can acknowledge that. But the last two April elections have been double-digit victories in Wisconsin. And for those of you not listening to me in Wisconsin, winning by 10 percentage points here is like winning by 20 in any other state. Most elections are decided within 3 to 6%, and that might be even giving it too much leeway, even in and of itself. But people are incredibly frustrated with Republican politics statewide. The idea that Hong would not be able to come away with a victory, or any of these candidates not be able to come away with a victory based on how other statewide elections have gone, not involving Kamala Harris, I don't think is paying attention to the obvious trends that have been showing themselves to be true over the course of the last 3 to 6 years. At the very least 4 years while I have been here, but something tells me that those of you that live here probably can go a little further back in time than I can. So I'm going to read some comments here. We're not going to spend the entire day today speculating about the primary, but I'm down to spend a good chunk of the day if you guys want to do it. When can we vote across political parties instead of straight tickets in the primary? It's frustrating you have to vote only down your ticket. Yeah, to a certain extent, but I do get why. Like, you shouldn't be able to vote for Democrats and Republicans because obviously you have a preference, and a lot of people would be voting to, vote in the weaker candidate regardless, and that goes for both parties. I get that logic. I get your frustration with it, and people shouldn't be voting down ticket. But I'll be honest with you, Brian. who would you want to vote for? Like, what Republican primaries are realistically happening? And then who would merit your vote? And I get why you're asking, because you would want to vote in a Republican primary for someone that isn't Glenn Grothman, right? Am I inferring who you would like, why this would work? Because I know you can't stand Glenn Grothman. If you lived in the district represented by Robin Voss, you would want to vote for somebody other than Robin Voss. Like, I get why you're asking the question. Hold on one second. I get why you're asking the question, but I just don't think that hits a big enough demographic of people, and it absolutely allows for more underhanded BS than it does any type of true representation, in my opinion. In my opinion, this is somebody who has voted for Republicans in my life, but in this iteration of politics, no. And yeah, myvote.wisconsin.gov. I did post a video on all my socials this morning about it. Myvote.wisconsin.gov. Incredibly useful for anybody who is trying to find out where they go to vote, who's on their ballot, things of that nature. All available, myvote.wisconsin.gov. Kristen says, I voted in the 2016 Republican primary to vote against Trump because I smelled a rat only. I still feel dirty about it. Yeah, I feel that. Aaron, I see you in the TikTok chat. I did text message you a thing. I think that's what the thumbs up was in response to. And again, you're coming on through YouTube, not TikTok, Aaron. But John Manny says, I really do wish we could cross parties in our primaries. See, I disagree. Is there really a Republican worth voting for? Damn near sat this election out till I heard back from 1 out of 3 candidates and got the clarification I needed. I feel that. It was David Crowley is strongly supported by all trade unions in Wisconsin because he won't stop data centers. I absolutely believe that. And again, I think it's short-sighted, but I did a thing about this on Friday. You're supposed to vote your own self-interest. And for union workers, the self-interest is defending data centers. And I get that. I don't think it's a smart strategy long-term, but who gives a shit what I think? I understand why they're looking at it that way. And as I've kind of intimated, I have a theory that it's why Outside the Box doesn't exist on the radio anymore, is because I was so outspoken about data centers. Again, can't prove that, but I got a strong feeling. You're saying I look like I have the good soap? What does that even mean? There are counties with only Republican sheriff candidates. Oh yeah, that's normal. That's why, I mean, I've been a big proponent of Danny for sheriff running, who has, I believe, stepped away from the race at this point, but it doesn't change the fact that I hope more people take this seriously the further along we get in. You're saying I look very clean. Okay, I'll take that. But that's why I think it's important for anybody can run for sheriff. You do not need law enforcement to run for sheriff. Mandatory voting, I think, is good. McPutt. And I see you there. I'm going to pull you up in a second. It's provocative. It gets the people going. I like the idea, but I hate fiscal penalties for anything. And I know that's how they kind of mandate mandatory voting is. If you don't vote, then you have to pay money. And I always hate when that happens, because it's essentially making, if you're poor, you better vote. But again, I think everybody should be taking part in the process. There are certain candidates that are Republican sheriff, for example, treasurer. I feel that. Happy with the job, not about their party. No, I feel that. Oh, Danny is still in. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Lorelai. I thought there were ramblings that she might not be in it anymore. I apologize. I probably misheard. I think that's a bullshit take, though. We could just wait. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? We could just invest in other infrastructure. There's been so much work in Wisconsin for construction workers. I agree. It's that Donald Trump killed all the solar panels and renewable energy projects, which is why people are so gung-ho on data centers. But I get it. Um, really quickly, and I welcome anybody else to take part in the conversation as well. We got our first guest coming on the program now, who is currently looking away from the screen. Hopefully she's not making any stupid faces. Bit of a celebrity. I'm kind of glad that I was able to get her. I'm not sure how I have this kind of clout still in 2026. I'm bringing you up now. Don't make any stupid faces. It's Eric, the intern, for those of you that are regularly from the radio show. Hopping on here to give a Gen Z perspective on what's going on in primary season here. What's up, Aaron?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. We know you're busy. You only have a little bit of time to chat with us here as you are en route to becoming a doctor intern. So
Yep.
very exciting stuff there. You're in the heart of socialism and communism, living in Milwaukee. What is the general consensus surrounding? Is it as pro-Hong as the media is trying to describe it? Are you seeing yard signs? Is it a split? What are your friends talking about? Give us the rundown about what's going on in the world of Milwaukee politics.
Okay, so first thing that I find very interesting is when you're in the city, you see a lot of Hong signs, but the minute you start getting out into the burbs, you see Crowley and Brennan signs.
Okay.
I walk around my neighborhood all the time just because I like to go for walks and I live in a fairly walkable area. And seldom do I see Crowley, Brennan. I've seen one sign for Kelda Royce, one sign for her, and that was in the burbs. So it's kind of interesting. Like when I step out of like the city of Milwaukee, I see like more of the more establishment Democrats votes or signs, which I find interesting. The other thing, I don't have a ton of friends, so I don't have like the best perspective, but pretty much all of my friends that I've talked to are in favor of Hong. Some of my friends were a little bit jealous that I got to go to that rally when I was like, you guys totally could have came too, but whatever. But yeah, I play on a volleyball team, and some of the people on that team are pro Hong as well. I haven't met a lot of people my age that aren't pro Hong.
Yeah, and that probably doesn't come as a shock, as you well know. And I mean, you listen to this show regularly. Your generation is hit by the affordability crisis because Gen Z innately is going to have less money just because you have less life. But when you have less money in a time when the cost of living is so expensive, stands the reason you're probably looking for some kind of transcendent change. I see a lot of people messaging that only rich Democrats like Joel Brennan, and I feel like that sounds pretty accurate there. It's why he's polling the way that he is. I don't think it's any shock that young people are in favor of it. Is it any policy? Is it the data center thing that's resonating? Is it the socialism thing that's resonating? Is it just the general disposition? What's bringing people out?
I don't want to speak for everyone, but I've heard from a couple different people that they just think that she represents something different. Like they think that she is just a different candidate than we've ever had and that she does represent change. And I don't know, I think it's safe to say people my age aren't afraid of the word socialism. We're not afraid of the word communism. Obviously, she's not a socialist, she's not a communist, she's a democratic socialist, very close, but not a communist at all. But I think a lot of peers of mine have been kind of saying like, oh, well, she represents something different. She has plans to make changes that I haven't heard other people say in a while. So I think people are just excited about someone new.
Yeah, I buy that. Are there any other elections generating any buzz in your area, or people showing up for Hong and they're just going to vote D down ticket, or what's the game plan there?
I have no idea. I see mostly Hong signs. I'm in District 19, so I see Ryan Clancy signs, and I see Bridget, I don't know her last name, but Bridget something signs. But I feel like I'm seeing more Ryan Clancy signs than the Bridget signs.
Sure.
But yeah, most of the houses I'm just seeing like the Hong poster, and that's it. So
Yeah, and you got an opportunity to meet Clancy when we were at that Hong event a couple of weeks ago there. It's very exciting stuff. And I mean, it's that empathy gap, right? You just posted a video about it. Erin is becoming a TikTok celeb. I don't know if you guys know this about her, but you can follow her on TikTok at Erin the Intern. But you're kind of focusing on that empathy gap that it seems like a lot of people are lacking. And to me, it's what the Hong campaign is all about, is pushing back against that lack of empathy.
yeah, I think like she represents like caring for your neighbor, which and like supporting everyone and lifting everyone up, which is strange that living in a state where we have a high concentration of like Christianity, you'd think that more people would be behind that message. But who am I to say?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, Dr. Aaron the intern, ahead of the game, I see Robin on here, outside the box's favorite boomer. If only we could get the young voters to vote. That's you. That's what your job is, and voting.
I do the little thing where I try to post on my Instagram story to remind people to register to vote and remind people that today's the day to vote or when and how to order an absentee ballot. I think the common misconception is that young people don't vote when in reality, young people don't just vote for whoever's at the top of the ticket. We vote for who we truly support. We don't really buy into the whole, oh, well, if you vote for this person, this other person's going to win. So, like, we vote for who we want to vote for. And if there isn't a candidate that we want to vote for, we won't vote.
There it is. You got to ask him nicely, is what she's saying. Well, hello from Sweden. Awesome. Thanks for being here,
Whoa.
Scarlett. Aaron, did you vote?
I haven't voted yet. I
She's not
slept in a little
going.
bit late today. Hey, don't worry about it. And now there's a thunderstorm coming, so I think I'll be voting later in the day.
Okay.
I'll
All
get
right.
there, well, rain or shine.
All right, good. I'm expecting photographic evidence of your "I voted"
Oh,
sticker.
sticker.
Otherwise, no one's picks or we're not buying it. Thanks for
Right.
jumping on. I know you kept emphasizing how busy you were, and I was like, "Shut up, get on the show."
No,
So thanks.
I have a meeting at 10 and I need to like,
Remote,
yeah.
17 minutes. What are we talking about here?
Hey, I just want to be, I have to eat some breakfast too. I'm a little hungry.
Okay.
I don't want
All
my
right.
tummy growling.
Well, thanks for being here. Make sure you keep outside the box all about. Tell all the people in the meeting to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All right, great. Thank you for being here. We'll talk soon. All right.
Bye. Sounds
Bye.
good.
Yeah.
Everyone
Bye.
vote. Thank
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Always good to hear from the intern there. Yeah, she's gonna vote. Don't worry about it. Um, but definitely some interesting perspective there, and it does highlight something else that I want to talk about. Is that it's not just the governor's race where I'm content voting for anybody. If you live in District 6, both Brad Smith and Amanda Bell are incredibly viable candidates. If you live in District 8, Rick Crossan, Katrina DeVille, and Mark Scheffler are all incredibly viable candidates. We really do have a lot of candidates that I think most people will find a way to get behind and vocalize their support for, regardless of who comes out of it. And I think it's important, whether it's treasurer, whether it's fill in the blank, right? There's so many different races, and it really is unique to Wisconsin right now, at least. And I will hold my breath for the general election as well. But we have remained uncorrupted in this primary relative to what so many others are doing in terms of their primary politics and their politics in general. If Hong comes out of this, maybe we see that change. And I played some clips for those of you that don't listen to Ben After Dark. Oh boy, do I have some clips to play for you guys of the media just absolutely losing their shit at the prospect that progressives, leftists, and socialists are winning elections, to the point where they are saying some pretty egregious things about people that talk like me, in a way that I think you'll be very interested to hear. But we really are lucky that regardless of who comes out, I'm just very thankful, because if you are a long time outside the box listener, you know that I would not be pulling my punches if I thought there were bullshit happening. If I thought there were a candidate who did not represent Wisconsin or their voters in the appropriate way, I would be the first voice to call that out. And I'd be calling it out in a way that is actually meaningful, because a lot of right wingers try and pretend that that's the case. Who gives a shit what they have to say? Look at what their candidate stands for. Nothing. Tom Tiffany stands for nothing. He can barely stand. He's like 5'3". But when somebody within the party has something to say about it, that's an entirely different conversation. And I think it's worth highlighting. Jeff, saying 2 boomers voted for Hong. Wonderful. Kaylin saying this boomer did as well. I have a feeling, like I said, and I have to plug this more tonight. Outside the Box is going to be live on site at the Fox River House. I'm going to be doing a live watch party. So rather than just kind of refreshing your internet browser every 5 minutes, trying to find a way to be able to get updated numbers, come watch it with me. I'm going to be collaborating with the guys of Resistance Radio up in Green Bay at the Fox River House. Hell, if you're not doing anything, you can stop on by. I'm going to be happy to bring some people on who want to have their voices heard during the election show. If it's a complete drubbing and it's over by 8:45, we know who won. Cool. Then that's when it'll be over. If it's 11:30 at night and we still don't have an answer, I'm going to stream for as long as the bar will allow us to stay there. It's going to be a little bit different than any of the Outside the Boxes or Ben After Darks you've seen, because there's a chance that it could go on for hours. And so there's going to be breaks. There's going to be a lot of people coming and going. I don't know how many people are actually expected to show up, but I'm going to be doing that. It's going to be streaming. Minimally, it's going to be streaming on YouTube and Facebook. I do not know if I'm going to be able to get it on TikTok or not. So to the TikTok community, if you have access to YouTube or Facebook, please check the show out there if you're interested in following along with the voting as it's happening. I think there's only 2 possible outcomes. It's either going to be a close race that either Fran or Crowley will win, or it's going to be a beatdown and Fran's going to run away with it. I don't want to get sucked into the idea, because I can recognize that a lot of people that vocalize their thoughts within this community are what we are. We need to find a way. Floyd notwithstanding, of course, a lot of us kind of echo one another quite a bit, and it's going to be interesting to see how this ultimately plays out. But I do believe the audience of this show is represented in Wisconsin writ large, and I hope that that feeling is borne out to be accurate, but we'll have to see. We got a lot of boomers saying they voted for Fran as well. Kaylin, Herb, Jeff, Fenway, all these characters here. Lorelei says, "Thank you, boomers, for choosing curiosity over ego." That's an interesting way to frame it. Anyone from Northeast Wisconsin that's at least sort of good about Hong is welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I feel that. So is this not an open invite thing? Because I've basically just been saying anybody who cares about politics can kind of show up, but I feel that. Carla says she hopes it's over by 8:45 so she can go to bed. Get the hell out of here, Carla. Get the hell out of here with that nonsense. Who do I got for treasurer? I think either one of those candidates I think is fine. Unfortunately, it's that freaking loss of internet that threw it all off. I actually met Dylan in person and was intending to have him on. But I mean, that's one of those positions that it kind of runs itself. And honestly, I'm kind of interested. There's people running third party as well for a lot of those positions, which is kind of interesting. Ben, why should I vote? There's a person of color. They've already tried to disenfranchise us, so why should we help? I mean, I get that logic, man. And like, I don't have anything to convince you otherwise, because it's my estimation that you, for your entire voting life, have been voting between apathy and outright antagonism. And those are the 2 options that you have to choose between electorally. And I think it goes without saying, but Democrats represent apathy towards people of color, and the Republican Party represents flat out antagonism. And those really aren't 2 good things to show up for. But here's the thing, and it's why the left is portrayed this way. The left is looking out for everybody. The difference between the left and liberals is that the left does not break stuff up by race. And so liberals try and weaponize that, and they say, they're intending to leave all these people of color behind, which is why it's important for you to vote for this centrist do nothing, because they are willing to say that they will specifically help black people in ways that they won't help other people. Whereas the left says this entire system has fucked everybody. Minorities have gotten the short end of the stick even more so than white people have. But there's a large enough subsect of the population that we just need to pull the whole society out of the rut that it is in. Francesca Hong represents that kind of politics. I actually saw a friend of the show, Alan Robinson, a black man who flat out said that he wasn't willing to endorse anybody. He didn't feel like anybody really was representing the black community, and that Francesca Hong specifically really had to make inroads with the black community in order to get that vote. I saw a video of his on Facebook this morning saying she is the only candidate for governor that showed up to the protests in Madison, which is exactly what centrists were saying would tank her candidacy, mind you. He is saying because she is the only one that was willing to show up, that was handed a bullhorn, and she was willing to talk about what happened in the way that so many of us saw it, that even though she is not perfect, she is the candidate that is most representative of a path forward for the black people in Madison, Milwaukee, and around Wisconsin, and that he was throwing his weight behind her. So, like, I feel you, Ecuador, and I am not patronizing you or mocking that sentiment. I'm not going to shame it, because you're exactly right. Democrats play lip service and then do nothing, and then Republicans tell you that you're actually the problem. And then those are the two options that you've been voting for between for basically your entire life, probably much longer than that, to be perfectly frank. It's time for a new class of politician, is what I'm saying, because you're right. And and obviously I'm biased, but the reason I think the way I think is because I see what I see. And I wouldn't be a leftist if I didn't think it offered the best path forward for everybody. Like, it used to be a running bit on my show that I always felt like I had to add qualifiers to everything that I say. I really don't feel that way as much anymore. But the fact is, when I'm saying tax the rich, it's not like I'm saying tax the rich, but also let's give the money to all the white people. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the secret subtext of what is represented by leftism or socialism or whatever you want to call what this new left flank of the party is. That's not the intention. There's actually a very notorious clip of two black women yelling down at Bernie Sanders and him not being able to push back against what they were saying about him and his beliefs. And there's a lot of people that speculate that that was the death of the left-wing movement right there, because he wasn't willing to stand up and just simply say, whatever centrists are telling you about what progressivism reflects, they're not representing it appropriately, and nobody's intending to leave anybody behind in this conversation. And that while minorities have obviously been left behind more than anybody else, everybody is feeling particularly left behind right now and looking for a different subsect. That's kind of the knock, right? They try and tell you Graham Plattner only has white people, Mamdani only has white people. And yeah, for some reason, more black people did vote for Cuomo than Mamdani. And for the record, most of those black people were much older. The younger half of that community still trends more towards progressivism. I don't get it. I don't understand the logic, but who am I? It's an experience that I haven't lived. But I do believe that attitude of I'm going to sit out because they don't represent me, and this is my conspiracy side coming out. I do believe that that is the end game. I believe that the two-party system is designed. If every single person stayed home and 7 people voted for the presidency, I believe that would be viewed as an absolute win by the establishment, whether it's Republican or Democrat. They want you to stay home. What they don't want is for you to feel inspired, which is, in my opinion, why they try to kneecap El Sayed and Hong before they get out of the primary, because then it's like, well, I guess I'm still going to vote. Like, given my line of work, I'm going to vote no matter what. That wouldn't be true if I were a teacher, but still me, but a teacher. I don't think I'd look at it the same way. They want you to feel unrepresented by politics, and they're willing to gaslight you into thinking that the people that are motivating you aren't electable. Meanwhile, you're feeling motivated, and this is the royal you. You're feeling motivated for the first time ever by a candidate coming out there and saying things. And to be perfectly honest with you guys, I'm describing MAGA to you as well. Like, I hope everyone listening can grasp. I realize that Donald Trump is a piece of shit. He's an orange carnival barker with no ideas who has left this country in an infinitely worse position than the place in which he found it. But when he hit the scene, he represented something different. He politics just like Reagan. We're dealing with a crazy ass Reagan right now. That's all he is. But when he hit the scene, Republicans were used to being force-fed Mitt Romney. Here's the most stiff white guy in a suit you couldn't caricaturize a stiff white guy in a suit more than what Mitt Romney is. Now, be excited and vote about this. Meanwhile, a lot of Republican voters were like, I don't think trickle-down economics works, and I feel left behind by this economy, and I want to see things change. There's actually a clip. So Democrats are high on their hog right now, saying for the first time in 10 years, for the first time since 2010, they have the high ground again on talking about the economy. Now, I think it's very important to recognize that if we're looking at it as the Democrats lost the narrative on the economy in 2010, what happened? Obamacare, which was, while not perfect, definitely better than what existed, happened. And more importantly, the bailout happened. We bailed out the banks. We bailed out the auto industry, and hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the country ended up losing their homes in the aftermath of the housing crisis. And the Democrats have been playing catch up for 16 years of that. Here is Neera Tanden, who is still involved in politics today, speaking on C-SPAN about what is on the table. And you tell me, if I didn't give the spoiler alert, because I already said it, this is Center for American Progress, CAP. They oftentimes do very liberal programming. These are people affiliated with the Obama administration. Let's listen to how she was talking in 2010 about what to do about government spending and how to address it. And you guys tell me, if I didn't tell you that this person were involved with the Obama campaign, if you would think she was even a Democrat. And then this would kind of open some eyes to you as to why Donald Trump wins in 2016 and why there's always an effort to kneecap any kind of movement coming from the actual left.
There's other, there are progressive governors like O'Malley and Cuomo who've taken a much more balanced approach on budgets, where they've looked at taxes as well as reforming programs and cutting programs. And so I think that's the approach the American people are supporting.
There's a viewer here who wants you to take us deeper into entitlements by Twitter. Ms. Tanden, do you know what the president means when he says entitlements are on the table? Any specifics and anything you would endorse?
Yeah, I mean, so there are a range of entitlements that, I think when we're talking about entitlements, we're talking about Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. These are programs that people receive support because of the status that they have. So when after 65, you get funding from Social Security and Medicare. Actually, it's getting older for Social Security. But the president has $300 billion in his budget in cuts in Medicare. That comes on top of cuts in Medicare from the Affordable Care Act. So he has put specific cuts in the budget already in Medicare, and they had savings in Medicaid in the past. I think the question really is, if we're going to have a deal to address long-term deficit reduction, we need to put both entitlements on the table as well as taxes. It's unfair to ask only middle-class Americans to bear the burden of our deficits. Middle-class Americans actually didn't create the deficits. So I think the challenge is that we should have entitlements on the savings, on the entitlements, and The Center for American Progress has put forward ideas on proposals to reform the beneficiary structure of Social Security. Some of our progressive allies aren't as excited about that as we are, but we've put those ideas on the table. But we think that those are legitimate ideas that need to be put part of a proposal where everyone's at the table. We don't just ask middle class Americans to sacrifice. We ask all Americans, and especially, I think it's not unreasonable to ask the wealthiest Americans to pay simply what they were paying in the Bush years.
Now, I have Moondog in my TikTok chat right now who says, I think I would include oil and gas subsidies in those entitlements. I would include auto subsidies in those entitlements, etc., which I absolutely agree. And then he followed up with, is this person actually a Democrat? This is why Democrats lose. And by the way, that's Neera Tanden in 2010. She is still a mainstay on CNN. And anytime a leftist, mark my words, if she is not on CNN tonight, she will be on CNN tomorrow morning, warning you about the threat that Francesca Hong represents to Democratic majorities and Democratic rule in a time when democracy is at stake under Donald Trump. This is why people vilify the left and liberals, is because they want to make the same cuts. In all honesty, how many Republicans do you think crossed over and voted for Obama in 2012 because he was willing to make these cuts to entitlement programs? Probably none. How many people that showed up and voted for Obama in 2008 because they believed he actually represented the kind of transcendent change that so many people thought this nation we needed almost 20 fucking years ago, did not decide to show up because of these kind of claims, because the working class was allowed to be shelved? And yes, he still ended up eking out a victory against one of the worst possible candidates, Mitt Romney, who was basically a walking freaking hedge fund. But I ask, why do Democrats think this is the conventional wisdom? And more importantly, how do they convince a certain demographic of people that we need to be scared of Francesca Hong because she's going to cancel Thanksgiving, but we don't need to be canceled to Democrats or worried about Democrats talking this way? Holy dog shit, get that person away from anything important. All she's doing is undermining negotiations. I agree. Neera lives on Twitter to get dunked on. All she does is bitch about democracy at stake whenever there isn't a centrist that will win. 100%. Corporate entitlements need to go. Public dollars shouldn't fund data centers, stadiums, corporate expansion, and more. Exactly. Those we can't seem to figure out how to eliminate from the budget. It's the Medicare, the Medicaid, the Social Security. Those are the things that we can figure out how to limit for so many of us takers that are out there right now. Exactly. Exactly. It's only ever bad for the economy when it impacts billionaires. If it's bad for all of us, it's just necessary. Carlin convinced me years ago not to vote. He still had a point, but while we have the ability to, it doesn't hurt to vote as long as we're not in a facsimile government, which has to be at risk, which seems to be at risk the illusion of democracy while the chains are pulled elsewhere. Absolutely. And I'd be interested because there's people that don't think this current iteration of the left even goes far enough. You know what I mean? There's people that say Bernie Sanders, Mamdani, Hong, they're all just an extension of the system. They are funneling revolutionary angst of a demographic of people that want to see true change and funneling it back into the two-party system. And then those same critics argue that Donald Trump did the same thing. They took a bunch of right-wingers that recognize that billionaires are screwing them over, that are leaving people in a lurch, and dangled the shiny keys that are being really mean to Mexicans in front of their face. But don't take my word for it. I've teased this clip long enough. I actually mentioned this in my show yesterday morning. I played the clips to make sure that it wouldn't get me censored on TikTok last night. So if you were listening last night, you already heard both of these clips. But if you weren't listening to yesterday's show in the morning or the evening, I was doing the rounds because I knew we had a primary today. myvote.wisconsin.gov, myvote.wisconsin.gov. I want to show you guys. I actually referenced this, but hearing it makes so much more difference than me just describing it. This is Morning Joe on MSNBC, you know, the leftist network, talking about the Wisconsin primary for governor. Francesca Hong campaigning with Hassan Piker. Specifically, that's who people are going to be talking about. And for the cheap seats, Hassan Piker one time said, I'm paraphrasing here, that America deserved 9/11. We have highlighted 15 times over on this show that you can acknowledge that America's foreign policy put us in a position where the violence ultimately happened, while not saying that anybody else deserves what happened. There's going to be 2 clips here. It's going to take about 4 minutes to get the whole thing through, but I really think it's imperative for you to see, because the mainstream media really is coming apart at the seams. So we're going to play this, and then I'm going to play a millennial who offers a pretty interesting take comparable to what I just said to you, and then I want to play the reaction. And I do want to, I'm not even doing this ironically, because I realize I say trigger warning all the time ironically. They do get into conversations about, I can't say the real word because it'll get, like, for some reason that'll get me censored, so I will just say grape, but take the G away, and that's what we're dealing with here. We're going to watch a grown-ass man yell that multiple times on national television because he can't make a coherent thought. Go ahead and give this a listen, and then we'll discuss after we hear everything they have to say.
But please, I don't need people telling me, oh, you have to just turn a blind eye to people saying that women getting raped on October 7th didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. No, Americans aren't going to support that. This is not about me. This is about the Democrats, once again, fumbling the football on the 2-yard line when they have a chance to make great gains, but being so woke, I don't know if you want to call it woke 1, woke 2, or woke 3, but being too woke to call out the obvious. I swear to God. It's crazy that we're even having this conversation. If somebody says a woman being raped doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, it's okay to call that person out and demand that candidates distance themselves from those people. If you want to rule, over a party and win elections. If somebody says going to a rally the day after Hamas slaughters more Jews than any time since the Holocaust, it's okay for Chuck Schumer. It's okay for Hakeem Jeffries to call that despicable and demand that people distance themselves from that. That's okay. So why are we bringing this up now? We're bringing this up now because it seems an awful lot like what was happening in 2024 when Democrats couldn't get out of their own way to win an election they should have won.
Imagine the audacity to compare running El Sayed, Mamdani, Hong, fill in the blank here for whoever you're talking about, to running Kamala Harris, to forcing Kamala Harris down our throats to the point where we had to vote for her. Otherwise, Donald Trump was going to be in office. Imagine trying to convince your listeners, which is what the effort is here, because let's be real, other than me, no one under the age of 65 is watching MSNBC, CNN, or Fox, and I'm only watching it for criticism purposes. I'm watching it for moments like this right here. Imagine thinking that a party that is gaining relevance because they're willing to actually hold billionaires to account, who want to do something about a cost of Medicare crisis that is just not being addressed in a meaningful way by most politicians. Imagine trying to make this comparison for people and thinking that this makes sense. It gets better. So obviously he was coming pretty unhinged there because, again, their whole job is to make sure Francesca Hong does not win. Their whole job is to make sure El Sayed doesn't win. And now that they're winning and they know that we are watching them, they have to pretend like they still support them, and they do not want to. And I don't know if that facade will keep up until November. But let's hear what happens when you bring up Pablo Torre, who is a sports journalist by nature, but has been making more inroads politically. Fantastic investigative journalism, in my opinion. He is a regular on this show. I'm going to play his response now, and you will even hear some outside the box sentiments echoed in what he says. And listen to how easily and nonchalantly he is just brushed aside, and we go right back to all these progressives must support the R word there in the Middle East. Go ahead and give this a listen and tell me if you can even take these kind of claims seriously when you hear them say it.
But because there is a historical analysis instead of a political one, you are missing the opportunity to build a coalition. And so what do? I think you try to avoid the faculty lounge, which is what that sounds like. It sounds like an opportunity to have a conversation that you should be having, not right now in the middle of an election, but at some point more abstractly. And in the meantime, you try to point out, look, Hassan Piker, I've talked to Hassan Piker before. I don't think he's Nick Fuentes. I think he's more like Charlie Kirk. And the idea there is there are people who exist to provoke on the other side. And the question is, as a party, as Dems, do you then hold yourself to a standard that is beyond what, again, the other side equivalent of the aisle is doing? And that's a political calculation for a party that hasn't made a lot of those, frankly.
So I haven't spoken with Hassan Piker and haven't listened to him. When you talked to him, did you ask him about 9/11, about the justification for 9/11, or him being unconcerned about Israeli women being raped on October the 7th? That's not a leading question. I'm genuinely curious.
No.
If you had the opportunity to talk to him about that.
Have not debated him on those issues. I know that that's stuff that I would never say. And the reality of that analysis that he has is familiar. It's the idea of American empire, Joe, and like, what have we wrought that we are now suffering, which is, again, this academic historical analysis from a million feet. But Abdul al-Sayed, from what he's saying now, right? What he's saying is, I would never say it, and it's unconscionable. And that's correct. But I welcome, by the way, that conversation. I don't even think it's a thing Hassan would debate at this point. It's something that you say when you're trying to make a point that forces the mainstream to reckon with all of the costs of what American militarism has done. And I would not say it's ridiculous.
I just don't know how talking about Jewish women being raped has anything to do with
horrible.
What America's foreign policy has wrought. And
over the course of a decade and a half, over 1.5 million Muslims were murdered by America, Israel, and the Western allies, while the world remained relatively silent. And then one day on 9/11, some bastards flew some planes into a building and killed 3,000 Americans. And it was a devastating day. If you cannot recognize how those two statements ultimately coalesce and tell one narrative, you're intentionally being obtuse in 2026. And it's the same principle with October 7th, and they do not want to acknowledge that. And that is what they are boiling these conversations down to. They're not talking about how successful the data center policy is. They are not talking about how Francesca Hong says, we're going to take $2 billion away from data centers entitlements. We're here talking about entitlements. As Phil in Oshkosh says, entitlement is fine for SSI. Us old people are entitled to that. But corporations are not entitled to our tax dollars when they are making record profits. Wisconsin is on pace to funnel $2 billion of entitlements into data centers. And Francesca Hong says, how about we use that instead to rebuild rural hospitals that are closing down all over the rural parts of our state? Let's invest that back in our schools. Let's expand Badger Care. Let's do something functional with that money rather than create a whole bunch of data centers for technology that it seems like most people, not just in Wisconsin, but all around this nation, do not want to see be built. They don't want to have that conversation. They would rather, as the Chiron along the bottom of the screen says, DSA co-chair says, September 11th or October 7th attacks were inevitable. As the Chiron says, tomorrow, Democratic primary for governor, they're talking about a certain population of people that are defending rape of innocent people. Excuse me, I don't know what happened. It feels like my allergies just kicked in. I'm not even trying to be funny right now. It just freaking walloped me. That's intentional. That is intentional that they are describing it that way. And it drives me nuts because I know that it's going to work on some people. It's the kind of thing that makes me wonder about why Outside the Box is no longer on FCC airwaves, because some people were actually willing to speak truth to this, and it was determined that that was actually the information that nobody wanted to hear. Kind of funny how that works out, is it not? By the way, Deanne asked, I'm intrigued by proportional representation as maybe a chance to elect candidates who aren't part of the duopoly. Thoughts? I mean, every system has its issues, but I don't have any issues with that. I don't have any issues with that at all. You're basically describing a parliamentary system, which is utilized in a lot of European nations. But I really don't know enough about the pros and cons to speak knowledgeably about it. But that's a great question, D. Toxic Todd, I wonder if this is the Todd, says, wait until it happens in a Jewish community here. I mean, I don't know how to react to that. I don't know what to say to that. You're saying because progressives win elections and tax the rich, that there's going to be mass violence against the Jewish community. I just feel like you're grasping straws. Like, I recognize you're probably just a troll trying to instigate some kind of over-the-top reaction out of me, and it's not going to work because I'm an evolved being. But I don't know how to react to what you're messaging me, I guess is what you're saying there. Todd Pingle. Yes, Lorelai, except it's Pingel. You spelled it wrong. Other than that, yes. You know, I've spelled it so many times, you really don't have an excuse to spell it wrong. If we can't beat data centers, why can't we tax them for our prosperity? I mean, I'd prefer they just not go up, but you're exactly right. You want to build it, then guess what? No record profits for you, buddy. And I would want the legislation to dictate that money is going to health and education. Like, I don't want to increase taxes on businesses so we can blow up a sixth country this year. Like, I want there to be a direct correlation between where that money is where that money's coming from and then where it's going. If they want us on board, I want you to explicitly explain in writing, in legislation, how much you're going to tax the fuck out of these guys and exactly how it's going to benefit me, not in terms of going to Raytheon, not in terms of going to one of the 7 healthcare companies that are out there. I want it actually making my life better, and maybe we'll talk. And yeah, we should get rid of the term entitlement program. Yeah, so Jar Manny's saying we've got Michael Goodwin, who is a Wisconsin Assembly District 3 member. That's Ron Tussler's district. He's running as a write-in. Does he have to get, I haven't had time to look into it, does he have to get a certain number of write-ins to get on the ballot? Because he's really not running against anybody, right? Like, he can just, if he got 7 votes, like, who else is really... You know, like, I guess I just don't know enough, but his name is Michael Goodwin. 635 write-ins are needed. Michael Goodwin is his name. Michael Goodwin, exactly how you expect it to be spelled. Go ahead and write him in. That's District 3 in Wisconsin. And by the way, I was listing all these other districts where we had plenty of good candidates. I realized I'd be remiss because I didn't even mention, and I've had them both on the show, but Sean O'Reilly and Grace Abbott's are both running for Assembly District 56 here in Wisconsin. And they too are both two fantastic candidates here. No matter who comes out of there, I feel like we've got a good candidate coming out to run there as well. But myvote.wisconsin.gov, myvote.wisconsin.gov will have all of the information you need to be as informed as possible when you're going to your polling place today. I'm not going to be there until the middle of the afternoon personally because I have my exclusive podcast on the Minocqua Brewing Company Substack office hours at 1 p.m. today, and I got to go and get some lunch in between then, so I'll probably go hit the polling place sometime after 2 p.m. today, but before Ben After Dark, of course. And for those of you that have joined us late, Ben After Dark is going to be on site at Fox River House. I'm going to be streaming a live watch party. I'm going to be collaborating with the Resistance Radio guys. Feel free to give them a follow as well. They also have a YouTube page here. Yeah, it's gonna be like what CNN, MSNBC, and Fox do, but actually good. So if you guys want somewhere fun, you don't have to come in person. Just hop on the Ben Cominos YouTube page that every single one of you mother effers better be subscribed to at this point. And if you're not, click that little subscribe button. And if you are, go tell 5 friends to go and subscribe and say, hey, did you know there's going to be live election coverage as it's happening if we want some good conversation there? And of course, I don't know that I'll be able to bring guests up just because I don't know how we're going to cross-pollinate our streams exactly. So I don't want to make any promises that I am unable to keep for right now. But if I can make it so that you guys can interact with it as well as the information comes in, I absolutely will. You obviously can type comments as you always do, but that'll be starting around 7:30, and I'm willing to let it ride until we have a winner, whether that be at 9 o'clock or, midnight. I don't know that I'm going to be willing to go much later than that. We'll see what ends up happening. I'll probably be boozing the entire time, and we'll get, a little more off the cuff as the show goes on. But please do take part in that if you can. EW says, has anyone have any observations on voter turnout so far this morning? Not that I am aware of. W for boozing. Thank you very much, Nishinkai. I know it's not the point, and it isn't pleasant, and this isn't to justify the carnage from Hamas on the day, but there is so much propaganda about things that happen that have no proof. No, I agree. And they use it to justify the violence and shout down any dissent of the Israeli government. Yeah, all that tracks. I don't think you're being hateful at all. That all sounds right. Jay says I'm probably going to be up the whole time. I hope you do. Got to get Jazz cabbaged up for tonight's stream. I could be talked into that. I don't know if River House has THC drinks, but if they do, might be getting crunk, as they used to say when I was in my teenage years. They do. Wonderful. I'll be fucked up. Believe you me. You're going to get, it's like when Anderson Cooper and that other dude do the New Year's thing, and they're just like pounding shots, and like as the night goes on, it's just all the anchors are more and more fucked up as time goes on. That's going to be me. What's up, Yvette? Some turnout perspective. I'm about a block from a church here in Greenville that is a polling place. It is more packed than it is on a Sunday morning. There we go. I still have friends asking me who to vote for. My mind is boggled. That's going to be out there. But, like, it is important, and I know you'll be that way, Jar Manning, just because I know you personally. But, like, there's a very famous scenario where, like, it shows a young person, and they ask a really stupid question about voting and about Yahtzees, you know what I mean? About 1940s Germany and stuff like that. And it shows a leftist who swims in this soup, and they just get so mad that this person doesn't already know this information. And when I say young person, I don't mean like a 6-year-old. I mean like a 26-year-old. And they're like asking questions about liberalism, socialism, fascism, and all that. They're asking about what was Hitler a Nazi or a Yahtzee or a fascist, or was he a socialist? You know what I mean? And in this cartoon that is drawn, it shows a leftist getting so angry, be like, how do you not know this? And essentially screaming at them and putting them in a state where they no longer want to ask the question anymore. And then it shows a guy with a Yahtzee insignia on his shirt put his arm around the kid and say, hey, man, we all have questions. Let me tell you a little bit about why you're asking the right ones. And now all of a sudden the right has another soldier to parrot their dumb bullshit that they say all the time. It's a similar principle here. It feels so crazy that people don't know who they're voting for in this primary on the day of the primary, but even on the day, it's just a matter of patience. Trust me, try talking politics for a living and then going out in the wild and then having people recognize you. And the sentence starts, I don't want to talk politics, but, and then everybody else in the circle runs away and you are stuck there talking to a complete stranger who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about politics. And then you listen to them prattle on for 5 minutes about stuff that you're like, man, every 15 seconds of this conversation could be an entire segment on my show, and I just don't want to talk to you this long. Trust me, nobody has this experience in this group more than what my profession puts me in a position to do. And I don't want this to sound like I don't enjoy talking politics with people that know what the hell they're talking about. The problem is that a lot of people don't. And it's a balancing act of finding the appropriate amount of time out of your time and energy out of your day to make these kind of statements to people versus just sometimes recognizing when someone's a lost cause. Somebody tried to get into me with it with Israel Palestine, like from a succinctly anti-Semitic attitude, but he also hated Muslims. And so like he's being very anti-Semitic. And I was like, whoa, well, like when you say shit like that, you're really setting the entire cause behind. And I start explaining the history a little bit. He goes, honestly, I just hope they both wipe each other off the planet. I'm like, okay, as long as we got to your true intention, thank you for saving me my time. Go ahead and be dumb over there. Thank you for being here. That's the type of person that we don't have time for. But a lot of people they got shit in their lives. You know what I mean? If I were raising a family, Outside the Box died on June 22nd because this is undoable. By the way, I have great advertiser news that I can't tell you guys right now, but oh boy, it looks like we're going to be around for the foreseeable future. But I get how different my scenario is than what so many people, specifically older. My life really is much more the norm for people under 45. But I get that it's not as easy to stay as informed as so many people would like on this kind of stuff, especially in primary season. You know what I mean? A 26-year-old Ben didn't give a shit about primary season. You want to talk about practice? Practice. Punny McPunnerson said someone threw a beer at Donald Trump today. Don't worry though, it was a draft, so he was able to dodge it. We got comedians on my TikTok page. I'm here for it. CKK says some of us have pens, homie. Well, I've got a Delta pen, but I mean, like, I try not to take it out in public. I mean, I absolutely could, but I don't. The THC shrinks, dude. If you're not partaking, let me tell you something. Get rid of that smoke in your lungs. Can anyone tell Jim why he couldn't find a drop box for his ballot last Thursday? I have not seen any reporting on that, Jim. So I can't really comment. And fundamentally, guys, as we head into a primary season that come tomorrow, we will ultimately be in election season for the next 3 months. I'm sure you're all incredibly ecstatic to hear information like that as we inch ever closer to this outcome here. When it's all said and done, what this election boils down to is a conversation about the economy. It's about job creation. It is about making sure that people can afford the basics in life anymore. Please recognize that while the mainstream is trying to make every election about Israel Palestine in the middle of an affordability crisis, most people are not really caring about that. Here's what most people are caring about. Now, you can say that that initial rise in jobs under the Biden administration was brought about by all these jobs coming back by COVID and that as after COVID, and that's absolutely fine. Very obviously, starting in January of 25, our job market has been on the decline. Affordability has been on a decline. That is not up for debate. That is what has been happening under Donald Trump. And yet we have MSNBC screaming about progressives condoning the sexual assault of people in Israel because they are the only ones that have an agenda to actually address that. They are the only ones still willing to say corporate greed on TV in their campaigns as a reason for why they cannot why people cannot make ends meet by and large, why such a large percentage of people are struggling to get by. When it's all said and done, if people are voting based on people's rhetoric surrounding the Middle East, I just don't, specifically the rhetoric surrounding the Middle East where they are condemning a genocide. Not rhetoric around the Middle East where they're supporting it. I'm saying the condemning side of things here. That is the side that is a bridge too far. Juba says, I love the remarks of Abdul Rahman Mohammed El Sayed to his detractors. He's absolutely on message. Which, if you guys haven't heard, Republicans are using his full Muslim name in order to scare voters. He's a Muslim. He's gonna institute Shakira law. I'm not gonna be able to pray the way I want to pray anymore. What happened to America? Because they don't have a message. And by the way, it's not working. This right here is the right-wing media sphere and the way that they are trending in order. YouTube, on Twitter, on Rumble, and podcast listeners. All of them are trending downward. Why? Because for the last 10 years, these right-wing podcasters have been telling them the reason your life sucks is Mexicans, trans people. Fill in the blank for whatever demographic really has no actual authority to dictate the way your life operates in any kind of meaningful way. And they now are fed up with it. These graphs start at the beginning of the Trump administration, and Donald Trump is failing. By every conceivable metric, Donald Trump is failing. And nobody wants to hear it from right-wing politics anymore. As Zero says on my TikTok chat right now, nobody cares. And he's exactly right. Nobody cares about right-wing talking points anymore. He always was a failure, says Steel Grid. Yes, he was. Although I think you'd be hard-pressed to convince people. Again, as a progressive, I understand that Donald Trump's economy in the first Trump term was bad. If Hillary Clinton had the exact same economy that Donald Trump had in the first Trump presidency, Democrats would all be telling you the economy fucking rocked, and Republicans would all be telling you that it sucked. But by and large, on the traditional metrics of examining an economy pre-COVID, which was nobody's fault, and Donald Trump's reaction to COVID actually wasn't terrible, people would have told you that the Trump economy was good. So you're right. He is a failure, but a lot of people didn't view it that way. Zero double down. Nobody cares about what you say. And he's exactly right. When you're a right winger still trying to defend Donald Trump, nobody cares what you have to say anymore, because it's become so abundantly clear how much this presidency and our two-party system has hung us out to dry. And people are growing very frustrated with that. I see a lot of you guys. I just snuck a Shakira Law in there, and I feel like a lot of you guys really enjoyed that. We need something new. I agree. Gavin Newsom ain't getting us out of this, you know? I'll be interested. I think the front runner right now, not my personal front runner, I think America's Democratic front runner is going to be Ossoff out in Georgia, and I don't know enough about him to comment on that. I don't know if he's just good. It's kind of like how Pete Buttigieg is like, he worked at a hedge fund and he has a lot of questionable policies, but as I've highlighted, then you go and talk to Pete Buttigieg and you're just like, fuck, he's likable. I'm telling you, there's an interview between he and I on my Spotify that he ran circles around me. And I don't say that lightly. I am not a Pete stan, you know? It's not like I'm like, oh, Pete Buttigieg, how exciting. Like, no, I was ready to pounce. I was interviewing him. I had to come into work on a Sunday morning because we had to pre-record. And it was Kamala Harris had already been forced upon us and put on the top of the ticket. And I was like, okay, high-profile guest. I'm going to let this guy have it. This is not representative of democracy, and I'm going to hammer him something fierce. And the best part about this story, and nobody knows this part, is that I had never been on the station on a weekend, and I have no idea how it happened, and I have no idea how I could have fixed it. But the entire time I was talking to Pete, there was a church service in my ear while I was talking. So you got like a preacher doing his thing, and then I'm sitting there like trying to think about questions and listening to what he's saying while I'm listening to church. And I was like, well, this isn't the ideal situation for trying to do one of the bigger interviews of my young career at that point. But nevertheless, here we are. We're just going to have to try and make do. We don't need any recycled leaders, new and younger. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Something that I feel like Ethan says is going to be a big problem in the next few years is the conflation of Kalshi with polling. So many people jump on a winner and these markets are snuck in as a surrogate. Here's the thing with that, Ethan. What's funny is before those markets really took off and were popular, I did use them as polling and they were surprisingly accurate. But much like with anything in life, enshittification is happening, and I do believe that those apps will eventually be weaponized against people. I do think you're right in the long run. But prior to them actually gaining any kind of momentum in the political sphere, they actually had some good information there that allowed for good guesses to be made based on the way the money was flowing. Tellerico could become a Democratic Party darling. See, here's the thing about that, CKK, is I've heard the exact same thing about El Sayed. And I think you should probably have to finish at least one term in Congress. I think winning an election and then, because if you really think about it, the presidential primary is going to start like 6 months later. So like the idea that you would win an election in Texas or Michigan and then 6 months later be like, thank you for trusting me for your vote. I'm going to go run for president now. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't opportunists out there that might be willing to do something like that. I'm not willing to pretend that that's not the case, but the timeline doesn't add up for me. And this isn't an indictment. I lump James Tellerico into the same category that I lump John Ossoff. I don't know if he actually means business or not. I don't know enough. I haven't been following along enough. And like, I don't want there to be a clip out there being like, we really need to take this guy seriously. But like, winning in purple states is big. But I mean, there's a lot of people that win in purple states that don't necessarily translate. Remember when Scott Walker thought that he could run for president because of what he did in Wisconsin? How'd that work out? But when it's all said and done, I see Yvette saying, I hope he wins, but look what happened to Beto. The difference between Beto and Tellerico, Yvette, is that Beto, for some reason, and it goes to show you how much of a grift the DNC is, they were running a political campaign on gun control in fucking Texas. And they were like, Beto has a chance to beat whoever, Ted Cruz in this Senate race here. Everybody has to throw their money into them. And in 2026, the idea that a Democrat thought they were going to win in Texas with their primary position being about gun control is a laughable assertion. It's a laughable assertion. Tellerico is making it about something entirely different. And most importantly, this president is uniquely unpopular. He's very, very bad at being president. To the point where a Trump troll tried to come into my TikTok and troll me, but he doesn't have any legs to stand on, and all you have to do is play dumb. And it's not like it can be like, well, look at this good thing Donald Trump did. Don't get me wrong. $1,000 for all the newborns born, but in a 4-year period, very democratic of him. That's very Democratic Party of him to give crumbs to a population of people that need so much more than what is ultimately being delivered. But like 95% of it is just objective horseshit that is putting us in a weaker position than we could ever hope to be in economically, national security wise. Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Because again, the border is more secure, but that assumes that I was nervous about the border beforehand. Here's another one. More job market info. Like, there's in no uncertain terms, just an obvious failure on the behalf of a Republican trifecta. Like, and Tom Tiffany voted for this. This chart that you're looking at right here, monthly job growth has slowed to a crawl and is now going negative. Don't get me wrong. I was doing one of the loudest shows in Wisconsin saying that while Joe Biden is creating jobs, those jobs are not paying nearly enough for the way that corporate interests are gouging us no matter where we end up going to buy our goods. I am not confused about that. But it's better to have a bunch of jobs that aren't paying enough than not have jobs. And so that people are just making $0. I can't imagine. I'm so thankful that I didn't need to go through the application process post being fired for being too good at my job. I am so happy that I don't have to enter this Trump Republican era market because look at how bad it is becoming. Elections will be in full force November 4th. Jim says, you might be right. Poly market has been accurate in the past, but the proliferation of these prediction markets has just added a vibes-based and gambling degenerates that are not hyper-focused. It's something, though, that can be totally manipulated by a few big whales. Absolutely, Ethan, but it's also real money. And I recognize that if Elon Musk is willing to sink $250 million into an election, the idea of betting $100 million on Poly market in order to sway an election, like the odds, and then potentially lose your bet is a risk worth taking. So I do recognize the inherent risk that you are referencing there, but it doesn't change, in my opinion, like, I don't know how to phrase this because there are a lot of sheep in society. So like maybe they will just follow the polling and go along with what that says. But I want to believe that that's not how it'll work. Yvette saying we're nearly $40 trillion in debt because of him. And bet me, Yvette, that as soon as Democrats have control, Republicans are going to remember that they're against spending and voting against any kind of social spending after cutting taxes for billionaires and increasing the defense budget to $1.5 trillion. The Democratic Party is trying to make this election about Israel, Palestine, and genocide rather than a failing Republican economy because leftists are winning. You need to be smart enough to call that out because they're not going to stop. And I have dealt with so many people in the 2026 primary, older individuals who have told me, my grandkids, my kids have kind of changed my mind about this election. I'm now viewing this through a different prism. I would argue that Outside the Box was doing that to thousands of people in mass every single day. People can change their minds and they are not innately susceptible to this kind of stuff, but there is an element of authority that is being lost more and more every single day within our media infrastructure that creates a permission structure for people to only think and act a certain way. It's kind of like how Republicans can go out and say whatever kind of inflammatory bullshit comes to their mind on that day. And they're never worried about, like, how are we going to moderate later in order to convince people to jump on board with us? That doesn't cross their mind. But when Donald Trump can take stake in 30 different companies, that is straight up communism. That's not a threat of communism. That's not misrepresenting communism. That's the government sometimes becoming the main shareholder in companies at the behest of the President of the United States. And it's barely a blip on the radar. But a progressive comes out and says, maybe we should bump up the corporate tax rate on the highest earners to 50%. 20% lower than what it was for a certain generation, boomers, for most of their early upbringing. And they are labeled as communists. They are told if they cannot moderate, then they are going to lose. It's okay to go out there and say, turn Gaza into a parking lot. You'll get eulogized on national television because it happened to Lindsey Graham. I am not operating from some perspective of not knowing what I am talking about. You will get eulogized on national television for saying maybe we should turn Gaza into a parking lot. But God forbid you say, if Israel can't stop murdering children, we are going to withhold weapons from them. Now you're hateful. Now you're anti-Semitic. Now you've lost mainstream appeal. The media creates a permission structure that allows people to know innately what is okay to say and what is not okay to say. And if you want to make it to the big leagues, if you want to make millions of dollars doing this job, you better toe that fucking line. Otherwise, you're not going to get a chance to make it. You need to be able to see through it. What this show does is try and highlight those failings every single day for you guys. And we can highlight this stuff. We can push back against this. It is not unbeatable. Yvette says, like Morning Joe did this morning. Exactly. That was yesterday morning, but the principle still holds. It's an election night here in Wisconsin. I'm very excited to be taking part in it today, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. There's an element of me being excited about being on the other side of no longer having to attack other Democrats and focusing more so on the obvious problem in the room: Tom Tiffany, Tony Weed, Glenn Grothman, the people that have agreed to cut taxes for billionaires while they're firing Americans all over this nation, while they are using, and this is not speculation, by the way, allow me to find my source on it really quickly, let's see here. Where did I save it? Where did I save it? Where did I save it? I might not be able to find the exact source, but if you look it up, you will be able to find it. Hiring companies are now using AI and your data in order to determine exactly how little money they are willing to pay. They are going to have to pay you in order to convince you to take the job. That is the problem. Market Watch. Companies are now using your credit history, past due accounts, browsing data, and social media accounts to figure out the absolute lowest salary you'll accept. Algorithmic wage suppression is being weaponized against workers to destroy wages. Did you hear there's a trans athlete? No, I heard this. This is how you push back against this. Do the Democrats want to do that, or don't they? Regardless of which candidate comes out, there's going to be questions about this. They want to make it an identity politics culture war issue, and it is going to be on Americans to not fall for it. 25 to 30% of this country is absolutely lost. They'll be sitting there blaming the transes until they find themselves homeless, begging for scraps, because they didn't realize that their orange dad president was robbing them blind. This is the issue. And if Democrats want to win, they'll make it the issue. If they're bought and paid for by the same people as Republicans, they're going to try and convince you of all of the doubt that is out there for leftists so that they can hopefully get enough people suppressed that the Republican wins and they can blame leftists. Apparently, the wage suppression came up on Jon Stewart. I believe it. And for the record, I've also been somebody that has gone on the record saying undocumented immigration is also a form of wage suppression. Because you come into this country illegally, you're not going to cause a scene. You're willing to work for less. A job that Americans would do for $52,000 and now all of a sudden being done for $38,000, and I'm being generous at $38,000. Then when you as an American show up and try and push back against that, they say, well, Jose is willing to do it for $38,000. Why are you telling me 52? I'll tell you what, why don't you just go sit on the unemployment line if you don't want to do it for 38? Wage suppression. I'm here for that. We need to do something about it. Same idea with data centers. Same idea with data harvesting, I should say. AI data. Rick says, for God's sake, unionize today, people. Cannot stress that enough. That's a pretty good suggestion. Yeah, ride share drivers and the customers as well are both being burned by the same technology as well. You're seeing some liberal states start to ban algorithmic pricing in grocery stores. That's the kind of shit that gets people waking up and interested in politics again. There's a reason why the left-leaning networks are so willing to try and convince you that if you invite Hassan Piker to a campaign that you are endorsing sexual assault. There's a rationale behind that. And it's not a good one. It's not based in any kind of logic, but there is a rationale behind that. It's so nice to know I'm not a conspiracy theorist, that the media really is trying to force the worst candidates on you and make you pick between a giant douche and a turd sandwich, as South Park so eloquently put it back in 2004. And here we are in 2026 having the same conversations. It's not an accident. And they have people willing to say that the two-party system is bad. And then when a leftist comes out saying, I'm here to buck the trend of the two-party system, I am here for you to make your life better. And the same people that would call my show and say, the two-party system sucks, it's two sides of the same coin, how are we ever going to do it? Will say, looks like Francesca Hong is siding with criminals. Why is she so pro-crime? And it's like, you're a fucking moron. You are falling for two-party system propaganda, and if you don't want to wake up, I can't keep shaking you for the rest of your life. You need to stay alert on this stuff and stop voting like an idiot. And I am not saying that voting against Francesca Hong means that you are voting like an idiot. I am saying that if you recognize, if you are of the same frame of mind, that Democrats and Republicans have both hung us out to dry for decades, and then a candidate shows up and says, you have been hung out to dry for decades. I represent a different type of politics in 2026. Maybe you should listen to that person, because I believe that the two-party system has left us out to dry for decades. I have a YouTube page you should subscribe to, by the way. Very close to monetizing. myvote.wisconsin.gov. myvote.wisconsin.gov. Oh, it was New Jersey. Thank you, Anthony. New Jersey is where they're banning the algorithmic pricing. We need that everywhere. We don't need a ban on transgender athletes. We need a ban on algorithmic pricing. You know, just as we get close to end time here, and I'm willing to go a little long just because we started late today, but I can't stay too long because Tuesdays are my busiest days. But I think the saddest part about all of this is the idea that November is even going to be remotely close. Like, and I recognize that a lot of Democrats pretended that there was nothing wrong during the Biden administration, whether that be about his actual health, whether it be about inflation, corporate greed, transitory inflation, whatever the situation may be, the aftermath of COVID. There were valid gripes about the Democratic Party, and a lot of Democrats pretended like nothing was wrong. But objectively, as somebody who shit talks Democrats to no end, everything was trending in a better direction under Biden than it was under Donald Trump. Like, no room for interpretation. Pick a statistic other than Mexicans crossing the border, which seems to really bother a certain segment of the population. You'd be really hard-pressed to find something that Donald Trump is doing better than Biden. And yet these elections are still going to be close. 40% of voters minimally are going to show up and say, yes, this is exactly what I voted for. And that's probably the most disheartening part. And the only way you push back against that is not to vote in some corporate lobbyist, centrist Democratic shill, not a Newsom, not a Harris. I kind of want to lump Buttigieg in there as well. You got to give some people something to believe in, because I know inevitably it's going to be so much closer than it needs to be. And I know how much this state in particular cannot stand this duopoly, this two-party system that has clearly failed us by every conceivable metric. Moondog does point out measles cases are way up. So not everything is worse under Donald Trump. We do have way more measles now, which is fine. See, Fergs, you say 70 million people knew everything we knew about Trump and they still voted for him. That's a Democratic problem. It's because, Fergs, my fundamental belief is that the Democrats knew in 2024 they would not be able to stymie a progressive challenger again. If they tried to fuck over Bernie in the obvious ways that they did in 16 and 20, there would be an uproar within the Democratic Party. And they chose to just forego the primary, put an unpopular candidate who wasn't even polling at 1% in 2020 at the top of the ticket and said, vote for this woman, otherwise worse things will happen. And America stood up with one voice and screamed back, no. And Democrats are willing to say, how didn't you know what Donald Trump, blah, 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 blah. No. How didn't you know that forcing a minority version of Kamala Harris, of Hillary Clinton on us is going to have the exact same outcome as forcing Hillary Clinton on us? This was a Democratic problem that they do not acknowledge. And now they cannot stop this leftist insurgent, resulting in Morning Joe throwing an absolute fucking hissy fit on national television, stomping his feet and screaming at the top of his lungs that Democrats want to rule, not govern, to rule America. And in order to do that, leftists need to stop condoning SA. Fuck out of here with that. I got an answer for how to address this. Hong is only funded by Republicans. Well, that's interesting. Republicans in Wisconsin are only funded by 3 billionaires. As somebody who thinks we need to get money out of politics, I'll take a bunch of small dollar donations from Republicans over 3 billionaires floating the 5'2" phenom Tom Tiffany any day of the week, Jonathan. Big money in politics is the reason the system sucks. It's the reason your orange dad president has failed you by every conceivable metric. Give me a candidate who's broke because billionaires don't want to float their campaign. That is who means business. Waka waka, Jonathan. Thanks for the follow, Bobby. I'm also on YouTube if you want to go ahead and subscribe over there as well. I'm so stoked here in Pittsburgh. Been waiting for Yin's guys primary for months now. Let's get it. Right on, Charles. I absolutely love that. Yeah, broke politicians are good politicians. Oh, really, Jonathan? You're a Democratic calling people progressive jihadists? Then maybe you're just a fucking moron. Thanks for being here. CKK says, I'm thinking about going to a bar in Sherwood this evening, and runs friend wins. I'll play It's the End of the World as We Know It on the jukebox repeatedly. The problem is nobody will buy the irony of that. I think that's hilarious. I think that's a very funny idea. I think you should play knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. You know, I'm going to get copyright struck because that probably sounds exactly like the real thing. RFK Jr. was talking about the vax should be done. Trump lowers how many should be done. We need broke politicians. 1,000%. 1,000%. David Crowley got all this money funneled into his campaign. I bet it's because he's going to buck the system. Get the fuck out of here. I got a flyer in the mail for David Crowley from a Republican super PAC. I'm telling you, Republicans are doing a head fake, like our boy Jonathan up there. They're cosplaying like they're all going to go and vote for Fran, and then what they're going to do is vote for Crowley because they know Crowley, much like Jonathan here, does not get the audience going. It does not elicit the same kind of motivation that Francesca Hong has elicited out of her followers. And I think much like the data is highlighting in Michigan, which we talked last week, it looks like a number of Republicans voted in an open primary there to vote for Haley Stevens, not the progressive, to vote for the centrist because centrists depress turnout. We'll have to see what ends up happening, but I'm optimistic. Since they allowed schools to let kids not be vaxxed for school, everything is coming back. Oh, yeah, we can have a conversation about vaccines another time. But, yeah, absolutely, another objective failure by this administration. The Republican Governors Association is backing Crowley. There we go. And, again, if Crowley won, I'd vote for him. And I'd probably hammer him into oblivion because I have a feeling I'd be let down in a lot of ways. But I would vote for him because, again, can't be here defending the 5'2" phenom. That is unacceptable. myvote.wisconsin.gov. Again, I will be live streaming a watch party for the election results tonight. It's going to be starting right around 7:30. Technology helping out at that point. as long as technology ends up working for me, I will be streaming live the entire time the results are coming in. We're just going to slowly be getting live updates, so on and so forth. So anybody who would like a group of people to kind of follow along with here, you're going to want to listen to Outside the Box. It'll be labeled as, I actually might even label it as Outside the Box tonight instead of Ben After Dark. We'll call it the Outside the Box primary special or something like that. And you guys can go ahead and jump on board. And Jonathan's dumbass is invited too, despite the fact that I think he's been hit in the head so many times. I could say something a little more. I'm showing with restraint. This is a newer, taller, more mature Ben that could just flatten Jonathan for sounding like a moron for the last 5 minutes of this show. But I'm not going to, because we're evolved. He's giving off big time 5'4" energy over there. Please do subscribe to this YouTube page. We're like 175 followers away from true monetization, which is going to be an incredibly exciting achievement. So we gotta get there. But subscribe to this page and follow along for all of the fun. Click that little bell so you'll be notified every day when we go live. The community is growing here slowly but surely. We're growing more and more every day, and so many people are coming up to me in the real world and telling me about the show, which is absolutely awesome. Yeah, we got some Benjitsu. We got some Benjitsu going, Justin. Sometimes I can't help myself. Well, it's just that these conservatives think they can cosplay as liberals, but they don't understand the rhetoric and how quickly they give away their standing in life. Like, this guy obviously supports the bombing of children. He is in favor of genocide. Jonathan LaFontaine is pro-genocide. And that's his take. I think it's an evil and vitriolic take, but who am I to tell him how to be? He wants to support the murder of women and children. And that's a Jonathan LaFontaine attitude. That's not how can I tell him to stop? Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jarmani, way to be the angel on my shoulder here. Jonathan, you're right. You are a big boy, Cheech. Hop on the show. There's your link. Hop on the show and have the conversation with me like a big boy. I'd be happy to do this with you because I've noticed something about you people. And you people tend to get pretty scared when you try to go toe-to-toe with somebody who does this professionally, who actually has his facts in order and is able to verbally pants you the second you come on the air. Come on the show. Punch that link into your browser right there. Punch it into your browser. Come on the show. Defend your talking points. If you type a single thing beyond this into this chat, yeah, I will later. Fuck you, you fucking loser. That's what I thought. So pansies like Jonathan like to talk big until they realize that they've run into a bit of a buzzsaw. And then they get scared. Too busy to come on the show, not too busy to espouse your pro-genocide beliefs, you fucking pansy. So anyway, people like Jonathan are invited to the evening show as well. I'm very excited to see the way things play out, but I don't know what's going to ultimately end up happening. I'm sure most of you guys are going to be there. I know the Ben After Darks are a lot less viewed than the Outside the Box page, and I get that. They're not for everybody. But for anybody who wants somebody like-minded to just kind of enjoy the results coming in, we'll be following along with Minnesota, who I barely even got a chance to talk about today. But we've got Flanagan and Craig running against one another. All this stuff here will be live starting around 7:30. I might start a little later, but I don't know. Where is show's over, buddy? You lost. Get the fuck out of here. Go find a right-wing show to go ahead and espouse your pro-genocide beliefs on. Your band now. You had your shot here, but yeah. So come along and join. It'll be available. I don't know if it's going to be on TikTok or not. Probably not, if I have to venture a guess. So this is the push for everybody to jump on board on the YouTube page. Subscribe to that YouTube page, and 7:30 until whenever we get results, or around midnight, whichever coming first. And we'll get into it more from there. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning of all this bullshit, but we got where we needed to go when it was all said and done. I'm going to call Rectum and let it have it this morning. At some point, I've got a lot of things I have to get done between now and then. But I'm going to bounce, and you guys all have a great rest of your day. myvote.wisconsin.gov, myvote.wisconsin.gov. Go get your information, and we'll move from there. Good day, everybody. Talk to you this evening.